All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you for hanging in there with us. We had a couple technical difficulties on my end this morning, so appreciate you all joining us this morning. I think that you're really going to learn a lot from our speaker today. I know that during this stay-at-home order, a lot of us are still trying to get our arms around how do we continue to move our companies and our organizations forward. And for a lot of that is finding new clients. We're feeling that here at the Chamber too, figuring out new ways to engage with our existing businesses, you all out there listening, and then also find new members that we can bring into our Chamber and show them the great work that we can do. So quick programming note before I introduce our speaker today. As you know, we've been developing this webinar series over the last couple of months. We'd love to hear from you if you think this is something you'd like us to continue as we do start moving back into our offices. If this is a format that works for you, please reach out and let us know. Also, we have next week, which would have normally been our monthly Chamber luncheon. We will be hosting that via Zoom on May 14th, and Toby Cook, the PR director for the Kansas City Royals, will be joining us, updating us on sort of where COVID-19 has left the Kansas City Royals and where they think that they will be moving forward throughout all of this, and giving us all of those real-time updates that I know we're all anxious for a beautiful day like today out at Kauffman Stadium. So please join us for that if you can. We also will have Secretary of Commerce for the state of Kansas, David Tolan, will be our EDC speaker this year, or this month, and we are going to open that up to all of our Chamber members this month as well, simply because there's so much great information that the Department of Commerce would like to share, and I think that you'll find him engaging as well. But now for today, it's my pleasure to have Dan join us. If you haven't had an opportunity to meet Dan, he's a wonderful guy, and I think you're going to learn a lot. So he has been working as a trainer and coaching for 27 years. He risked everything and started over twice career-wise in 1993 as a benefits broker, and again in 2005 with the Sandler training office. He has co-authored 3 books: The Reunion, Another Reunion, and The Last Reunion, and career significance and how pursuing what you're meant to do. Maybe I should be reading that.
I can set you up.
Best that you can be. He is blessed to be a mentor with the Hellsberg Entrepreneurial Program in Kansas City, and he asked to interview on numerous panels, podcasts, and radio programs concerning sales and sales management and leadership. And I know it sounds like a lot of people have been tapping into your expertise over these past few months. When he's not being mistaken for a certain celebrity, Dan and his wife of 29 years are beginning the empty nest stage of their lives, with their daughters living in Dallas and Kansas City and 2 college-age sons at the University of Kansas. So with that, I will turn this whole thing over to Dan. Welcome so much. Thank you for joining us at the Shawnee Chamber.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. So a couple things just to kind of get us started here. We are going to, because you're not able to interact with me because this is a webinar format, but we do want to hear from you. So what that means is there's a chat feature down at the bottom, and it might just be a good little test right now. If you just all want to go down there and give it a shot, just kind of do a quick little roll call, go down to the chat feature and just type in here, HERE, and then you'll kind of see what that's like, and then hit enter. And I'm starting to see the here's come in. So that's just kind of a good way to get you familiar with that. Although you are probably all more familiar with this than you were 6 weeks ago. We've been using Zoom for about 4.5 years. And my running truth joke is that I've learned more about Zoom in the last 6 weeks than I did in the previous 4.5 years. So it's just become, what we're using now. So yeah, go ahead and just type here and there. If nothing else, it just gets you used to it. But if we'd like, Anne's going to go ahead and kind of monitor the chat, because obviously I have, something I want to go over with you guys today, but it's way better if we can interact with one another. And so chat's going to be the way to do that. So if you have a question, she'll be monitoring it. And I'll probably poke around there too once in a while, but just, if something doesn't make sense, Anne's going to interrupt me right away, assuming she sees it. And so I don't want you to feel like you know, we have to wait to the end, because we're not going to wait to the end, because by then I may not even remember what we were talking about. And then the other thing, and hopefully this doesn't upset anybody, we're going to get done a little early today, probably in that 10:15, 10:20 range. So hopefully that doesn't put any of you out. I know for me, it's kind of nice to have an extra 10 minutes sometimes, but it's basically because I've got another one at 10:30. So, but we can more than get through this in an hour and 15 minutes. Okay, so let me go ahead and share a screen here, and we're just gonna, you know, kind of get us centered here on a few
Hey,
things.
Dan, before we get started,
Yeah.
people want to know what celebrity you get
Oh,
mistaken.
okay, well, they have to guess.
Oh, okay.
I can take my glasses off, that
All
helps.
right. And I will say, whoever guesses correctly, the chamber will purchase a $20 gift card to their Shawnee Chamber restaurant of choice.
Ooh, and here's the
Mm.
thing, I get more than
Have to
one.
be a
So
Shawnee Chamber
if
member.
you get any of them right, I will, I have like 4 or 5 people that say. So we're gonna let you guys, you know, not necessarily sound like this person, but I get, or there's more than one. And we'll just leave it at that. I don't want to give it away. But if you get any of them right, because I'm the one that knows, then uh, that person gets to the first person. So we are going to look in the order that gets it right, but I wouldn't give up. Okay. Wow, there's some new ones in there now. Never before. Okay, let's go. But for now, let's just keep going. All right. It's funny, I put that in there because it's just different, and most of the time people don't ask. So I'm like, well, then I'm not going to tell you. It's that easy. Okay, so let's go to the PowerPoint. All right, so if you are wanting to learn more about prospecting in turbulent times, you are in the right place. Okay, so one thing I wanted to really start out here is, I think, to just get perspective. I did an interview with Joel Goldberg last Friday, and some of you are probably familiar with him. He's the broadcaster for the Kansas City Royals. And I'm going to steal a little bit from something he said. He goes, I have all these P words during this, you know, pandemic, perspective, purpose. I'm trying to think, even the payroll protection plan was PPP. So whatever reason, P is the word. But I do want to give you a little perspective here about what's gone down, because I think it's real easy to kind of put your life on pause. That's one of my P's, not putting my life on pause. I want to come back to that until things get better. And I would just really urge you to not put your prospecting on pause right now. Now, having said that, it is going to be different how we're going about it. We're not going to pretend business as usual. That would be insensitive. But just because there's stuff going on in the world, there's always stuff going on in the world. And doesn't mean that we stop prospecting. So one of the things I wanted to just kind of direct everybody's attention to is this market down here. Now, another word that you could put in there is marketplace. And if you can just go back 6, 7, 8 weeks, that's where everything originated. Fair? We had a pandemic and it impacted the marketplace, right? But by looking at just that corner instead of seeing the, you know, everything's changed. Some things have changed because you've allowed it. Some things have changed because they've changed. And so I do like the word pause, but for a different reason. Not pausing on prospecting, but I like the word pause because for many of us, this has been just one giant pause in terms of disrupting the way we thought life was going to be. And I know for a lot of you, you really liked the way life was before. That doesn't mean that life can't be even better. And so personally for me, another P, I've been able to really get clear on a lot of things in my life with this pause or this disruption. I like the word pause better because disruption sounds bad. And pause just is. There's a pause. And so, you know, some things that I didn't think I could live without, I've learned I can live without. Some things that, you know, I thought, you know, I like that, but now that I can't have anymore, now I really like that. So it's really allowed us to just get clarity. And you know, I always say, be careful what you wish for, be careful what you pray for, because my 2 words for 2020, I usually only have one, but I didn't want to give up the first one, so I have 2, is my first word is fun. Anne mentioned that we are entering the empty nest stage of our lives. And not that I didn't have fun when the kids were at home, but pretty much, our friends, everything kind of revolved around them. And because we just spent so much time in their activities. Well, now we get to pick our friends a little bit more. So another P. And so, and I just, want to continue to have fun. So, but my other word was clarity. And that word for me was meaningful because of 2020, this year. And if you don't have a word right now, it's not too late. I mean, it's only May. You got 8 more months. But I had picked clarity because of the symbolism of 2020 vision. And wow, did I get some clarity these last 6 weeks. And I will continue to get clarity. And so I'm really thankful for the pause. Now, some of you are going, this guy is smoking something. That's why he's having so much fun. Well, no, I'm not smoking anything. And this has just been it's really what you make of it, right? So I just challenge you to get clear on what's important to you right now. There's a reason the whole world is going through this, not just Kansas City, not just you. I know it feels that way sometimes. The whole world. Something's up. Something, anytime there's a setback, there's a comeback. Anytime there's a setback, there's a setup. So we're being set up for something really good. And the question is, are you getting leaner and meaner, or are you just kind of languishing during this time? And it's a choice. It is a choice. So back to the marketplace. So the first thing that COVID-19 started to impact were our organizations, right? The government has told us more what we can and can't do at any point in my life, and I'm in my mid-50s. And so, when you just can't be open and you just can't go places, that impacts organizations, and we've all been impacted by that. The thing that I really want to stress, though, is we don't have a lot of control over the marketplace, do we? Now, I have control over whether I social distance. I have control whether I stay in my home. I have control over that stuff. But I do need to go get groceries and, do need to get exercise. And I could just, by someone walking by me, pick it up, But I have some things I can control, but really not much beyond that. Fair? Of course, some of us have a little more control of organizations. I don't know if there's any business owners on here or C-level folks, but you have a little more control of your organization than, say, a typical employee. But I do have, even as a typical employee, I have some control. But the part that I really don't want you guys, or I'm going to say what I want you to really focus on is the you part of this triangle. And I have, of course, you attract the people that you sound like. And I've been attracting a lot of people that have really worked on themselves during this time. And there's 3 parts to that. There's the body, there's the mind, and there's the spirit. So let me give you an example. Body could mean, some of you were road warriors. You were traveling a lot. And it was really hard for you to get a regular exercise regimen. It was harder for you to eat healthy. I'm not saying you couldn't, but when you're entertaining clients, when you're going out and doing those things, it's just harder to maintain weight. Maybe you couldn't get in a regular regimen in terms of exercise. Well, now we're home, and we frankly have had some beautiful days, notwithstanding today. So some of you are saying, I know several people that have lost anywhere between 5 and 20 pounds just during the pandemic. Now, some of it was stress induced, but a lot of it was intentional. They're just like, I'm just really, I can eat better when I'm at home. I can take a break and go out for a walk, where I maybe didn't perceive I could do that. It was just a lot of flexibility. I mean, I haven't worn my dress shoes in 7 weeks. So, if I'm going to go out for a walk and I have dress shoes on, I'm probably good for about a mile, because, it's just not the right shoes, right? Or I could put them in my car. But I haven't worn dress shoes. I haven't worn dress slacks in 7 weeks. So the point of this is some of us can just get up and go out walk for 15, 30 minutes. Now this other one, so that's body. What are you putting in your mouth? What are you getting more active? And some of you are going, I did not expect this. Well, here's the thing I want to share with you. As we transition out of this, and this is the first time we kind of have a date, that I think is going to hold. And we are going to transition out of this. Life's never going to be the same, just like it was prior. I mean, flying was never the same after 9/11, but it wasn't all bad, right? So things aren't ever going to be the same, but they can get better. And so the thing I really want to urge you is as we transition out of this, if the only thing that's changed is we've transitioned out of this, I think that was kind of a swing and a miss. Because this was an ideal time and still is, because this transition, we don't know how long it's going to last. So if you go, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about this. 6 weeks is gone and I could have been, we don't need to shit all over ourselves at this point. Let's just look forward and what could I still be doing as we transition out of this? Because this isn't going to be like a light switch. Okay, then mind. There's a steady diet 24/7 of horror on all the news channels. And I think you just really got to ask yourself, do I really need to be that informed? Now, I do think it's important for us to be informed. In fact, I've probably gone a little too much the other way. Like there's some stuff I was kind of embarrassed I didn't even know because I don't even want to watch that crap. It does absolutely nothing to support me as a person, who I am and what I believe in. Fear and worry does not support me. So I am not going to watch that stuff. I do need to watch a little bit to be informed. And you know what? The best place to do it is just to Google it, because then I can control it instead of watching. So, but who are you listening to? Who are the people that you're attracting? Are they the ones that just complain? Or are they the people that are seeing this as a way for you to become a better person? When something rough happens to us, and no one's immune, not only from this pandemic, but no one's immune from bad things happening. It just, if you've lived 25 years or more, it's going to happen, even less. So the point of it is what are you going to do with it? So what I would say is you kind of have a choice, and some of you may not have been making choices, you've been reacting. You are either going to get better or you're going to get bitter, and it's a choice. You cannot remain status quo in this environment. If you are status quo, then you are falling behind. You cannot maintain status quo in any environment, but particularly in this environment. So you got to just decide, am I going to be bitter and be angry that so-and-so didn't do something sooner, or blame who, or blame Trump, or blame whatever? Okay, what's done is done. And it does no good to go back there. You had no control over that. And complaining about it, you do have control over. And so you are going to attract those people into your life. If that's what you want, just know you're doing it. Now, if you said, I don't like that, I don't want that, well, then we need to stop talking about it. And we need to redirect and reframe about what's good about what's happening. And there is so much good that is happening. You are just choosing not to see it. That's a choice. That's a choice. And then the last part is spirit. I know a lot of people who, that can take a couple different ways. Some people, that's God. You equate spirit with God, and some of you are closer to God now than you've been because he kind of brought you to your knees. Some of you, it's the universe, and you just feel like kind of inspired by some of the things and the stories. There are a lot of good stories out there too. What I'm referring to are the stories about the death toll just going. I mean, how does that help every day to see that? That's just, there's no point in that. And then the other part of spirit is just your overall presence. Are you a light or are you a darkness as it relates to all this? You can be a light, you can be a smile, you can focus on things. So what I'd like to do is, just because I want you guys to get familiar with chat, and I might just have Ann kind of monitor this, but what I'd like you to do is before we do this though, I want you to give yourself a number between 1 and 10. And you don't need to chat this yet, okay? So just write this down on a piece of paper. How do you currently feel about your body? No one's going to see this number. Maybe you put a 6. How do you feel about your mind? Are you thinking your mind, or is your mind thinking you? That's a choice. Some of you might go, I've been watching, oh my gosh, he hit me between the eyes. He's reading my mail. You might give yourself a 5 there. And maybe spirit-wise, you're an 8. So what you want to do is you want to add those 3 up and divide by 3, and that becomes your U triangle. Okay? So just take your time, add those 3 up. We don't need to know your numbers, no need to chat any of this. But I want you to come up with a number with the U triangle. And then I want you also to just, how do you feel about your organization right now? Some of you, that number has gone up. You've been so impressed with how they've handled this. And others, it's gone down, and some it's stayed the same. It just is. It's just a number. And then how do you feel about the marketplace right now? So then once you get that number in the U triangle, let's just pretend you had a 7 in there. When you add those 3 up, divide by 3. You go down the organization, maybe you had an 8. And then maybe in the marketplace, you still feel like it's a 6. So you add those 3 up, divide by 3, and your overall attitude would be a 7 in that scenario. Okay? So I'm going to give you a second. This is important work for you to be doing right now, because you can't just say everything is bad and everything is good, because when you label it, then creativity stops. I like to say it just is. Now that's different than it is what it is. It is what it is says just can't do anything about it. It is just means it just is. I'm looking for the good in that. Okay, so now here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to go up to the U triangle for just a second, body, mind, and spirit. And for some of you that for whatever reason it's never occurred to you to work on any of this, might be your moment, because the transition's still going to be happening. But if you had to pick one of those, I don't need to know the score, but I just want you to either type body, mind, or spirit that you personally want to be better at as we transition out of this, what you want to be better at. And then I'm going to have Ann just kind of monitor them. And she's just going to give us an idea if there's more bodies, more spirits, more minds. So just go ahead, and I'm going to stop share here for a second so I can kind of participate. You guys are doing great on the chat. And Dustin, I'm going to ask you a quick question while we're waiting. We can download the chats, right? At the end, since it's being recorded, as far as you know. Can't hear you. There you go.
We should be able to download the chat for you. No problem.
Yeah, if you're recording, it should be, because I have a little something I want to do at the end, if that's okay. So I'm seeing some, oh, okay, we're losing some folks already. Body, mind, body. Right now, would you say body's winning, Ann? And just so you know, Ann, you're still muted.
Looks about,
I know, it's common. I knew you were probably talking, but I couldn't see you were talking.
Oh, no, I was not able to unzoom or unmute. Yeah, it looks like body is definitely, all right, everybody can stand up and do some exercises while you're listening.
Exactly. I can't see you guys.
Yep.
So, but let's face it, just look out your window for a second. Gosh, no excuses. Let's get out there and get moving, right? But the other thing is, there's more fruits and vegetables. There's just a lot of, this is a great time to be working on your body. So now, a lot of you are wondering, what does this have to do with sales? Well, how you are in your U triangle impacts how you come off. It impacts your energy. It impacts just a lot of different things. You are way, way, way more than a salesperson or a sales professional or whatever you want to call yourself, business development, whatever word you use. That is just one role in your life, and you are way more than that. So why do I say that? Because when you work on yourself, it impacts all of your roles, not just the sales. Parent, adult, child, or parent, spouse, CEO, whatever your title is, that's just one of the roles. Golfer, tennis player, crocheter. I mean, when your U triangle is better, it impacts all of your roles. Now, professional selling is a little bit different in the fact that the rejection factor is typically higher than any other role you have. I would hope it's higher than your spouse. Otherwise, ooh, but we aren't going to go there today. But let's just assume it's higher. So let me come back to here for a second. All right, so the main thing I want you guys to know is that it all started in just that one corner of the attitude triangle, the marketplace. But if you're not real crazy about the number in the middle of your attitude or the you now have a remedy. Or at least you know where to become intentional. And you guys were very good about putting body, mind, or spirit there. Okay, let's keep moving here. All right, so a couple of things. Now, some of you have probably heard some of this before. Oops, sorry, I'm moving my little Zoom thing here, but some of you have probably heard the term control the controllables. That is wise advice always. Control the controllables. It's even more wise during this disruption because a lot of us are just being forced to do things, or it feels that way. I mean, and so one thing that we want you to just kind of remember is you can't manage anything you can't control. Some of you, believe it or not, your sales are up right now. And I think it's really, really important for people to hear that. In fact, I would like those of you that if your sales are even slightly up in the last 6 to 8 weeks, to please type in the chat what industry you're in, okay? Even if it's up even slightly, like 1%. And then now some of you, I would just say probably a larger portion of you, about 60% of us are, believe it or not, we're just largely unaffected. I mean, it's kind of better, a little worse, but we're kind of in what I would call holding our own, right? And then there's 20% of us that it's been borderline devastating. I mean, you guys know all those industries. But let's face it, I wouldn't say that you shouldn't call on them, but I think calling on them with the same products and services you did before might not make sense. But what kind of chats are we getting, if any, on the industries where it's even up 1% or more? What are you reading in there, Anne? You might need to unmute yourself.
I am working off my iPad, and for some reason, it is not working with me today.
That's all right.
So right now, we haven't seen a lot of people respond. Come on, guys.
There's nobody that's, I can share with you some industries that I've observed, and fortunately, they're my clients because, I mean, it could have gone the other way, right?
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, we're staying with you because, it's either neutral or better, and I'm like, well, thankful for that. But one of them is in transportation, logistics.
Mm-hmm.
Theirs is actually up. Another client of mine is in managed services. So that's like when you have someone remotely take care of all your computers. Used to be they'd have to come out and all that stuff. Well, now they can do everything remotely. They're up because think about how many people had to move home and get computers going. Another one is they provide, and I'm sharing this with you because, business is not as usual, but maybe you need to, throw your fishing rod and your hook in a different part of the lake instead of just trying to make something happen that's not going to happen. Well, another client of mine is they provide like all the services to the food industry, like, like gloves and, just stuff for companies that make food. And of course, certain food, industries are up. I'm trying to think of what else I've observed, but I think we have a few in there now, don't we, Ann?
Let's see. We've got banking, nonprofit, medical missions. They're down. I'm sure that I know that some healthcare has kind of taken a bit of a hit because they're doing emergency only, but I think that's starting to loosen up a little bit. I know our orthodontist is now seeing patients again. So construction, I see that, and that's managed to kind of hang fairly strong through all of this. I talked to a lot of our construction members, and most of them are doing okay. I know that I saw Marty Hoffey was on here earlier, and Jen DeMeyer, and so I'm curious as to if they're still seeing projects come through, or at least a pipeline that was full, so that makes it manageable.
Yes. Yeah, and I appreciate you mentioning banking. I had forgotten about that too. I have another client in banking, because the PPP has allowed some banks to get some more market share, because you really sometimes don't learn much about someone until adversity hits. And so some banks just frankly weren't able to be very nimble with that and just weren't a lot of help, and some were. And so I know several banks that have been able, that their business is up because of the PPP piece, and it's allowed them to have conversations with companies and individuals that they wouldn't have been able to have even 8 weeks ago. And anything else in there that's would be good to share?
Insurance. Oh, and I see ARC Construction's in there. Insurance. We had an insurance panel a couple of weeks ago. I don't know. Every day's a week.
I know you're having one a lot. Yeah.
When we did that anymore, but you know, a lot of you know, people looking and trying to, you know, both life insurance, you know, and as well as their own personal liability insurance for their business and all that. So that seems like that they've been staying pretty busy. I'm curious. I see Jay Henricks on here with Parks and Rec. I'm curious as to how they're doing, and definitely different times and trying to manage everything around that. More banking.
Yeah.
But Parks and Rec is definitely a good time for a lot of the planning stuff that's happening right now. But to be determined, I think, how all that looks for the summer.
Yeah. But, you know, and that's one thing about this this whole situation that was really kind of tricky, is that things were changing so quickly. And so not only did it impact the whole world, you know, all at once, which is really unique, but also just, you know, it's this invisible, you know, there's an invisible war going on, basically. Now, my daughter, one of my daughters that's grown, she got laid off from one company because it was, you know, high-end retail. But she was able to get another job very quickly with a high-end, she does have a silver spoon in her mouth. I noticed I said that twice. But anyway, just an observation, but it's my fault. But she got a new position through a high-end tile company, which kind of fits in with the construction. And I talked to one of the people she works with, because they happen to be a personal friend of mine, and she said she had a better March and April this year than she did last year. So the reason I'm bringing this up is it's real easy to focus on the bad. But I want you guys to know there's a lot of good out there. And so you gotta, you know, it's almost like training my eyes to bounce from the bad and to seek the good. And because it has changed. And so getting back to these slides real quickly, just a second here.
You know who else is up, Dan?
Who's
Our
that?
liquor store members.
Yes, they are.
They're doing just fine, I believe.
And I'm not going to lie that I've contributed to that, but that's another thing. Ann knows enough to know that that's not a lie. Okay, not good for my weight, but anyway, it's good for my mental health. Okay, so back to you can't manage anything control. So I can't control that some of these other industries aren't buying anymore, but I can control that others are, and redirecting my efforts towards that. Are you guys with me on that? So it's really easy to wave the white flag, like, no, I can't do anything right now because everything's down. Everything's not down. That thinking does not support you. And then the other one is never manage your numbers, manage your behavior. Now, obviously, my behavior leads to numbers. Most of us can't just, you know, show up and even 8 weeks ago, and, you know, my business just magically appears out of nowhere. I mean, most of us had to do something, like even return a call. You know, it's amazing to me that people say, you know, I called so-and-so about help me out. They wouldn't even return my call. I go, yeah, I mean, how it must be great to be them. They don't even have to call back. But I mean, let's face it, that's probably not a good long-term solution. This was before the pandemic, that they weren't even calling people back. Well, that's a behavior. But they were looking at, well, my numbers are good, so I don't need to call you back. That's they might be not resenting, what's the word? Not happy with some of that, regretting that. So just, now we are all going, I know the chamber's looking at how many memberships they have, and they're looking at their money. I'm looking at my money and how many memberships I have too, because we're a membership-based organization. But the reality of it is I'm also tracking what I'm doing to get to those numbers. And so we call that inspecting what you expect. So if I've decided it's insensitive to prospect right now, then I have nothing to manage but my numbers. And you're probably not liking what you're seeing if you're not even prospecting right now, unless you happen to be in industries that are up right now. Okay, so and if there's any questions, you guys just go through the chat because Anne's monitoring that. So here's something I want to kind of, we typically are not suggesting you have 30-day goals because for most of us, it's not really credible. We're big fans of 90-day goals because some of you may have read the book, The 4-Week Year. Now you're going, that doesn't add up to a year, Dan. Or no, I'm sorry, the 12-week year. That doesn't add up to a year either. It's the 12-week year, sorry. I was thinking 4 quarters because 12 weeks is a quarter, right? So just in general, if you have annual goals, now here's the cool part. Well, I guess we're a month into second quarter, right? So the cool part is it's not too late to do this. First of all, it's never too late to do this. But if you're looking at this year, if we were doing this in November, it's not going to be as meaningful for 2020 as if we're doing it in May. But the point of it is to break up your year into quarters and to not only have goals for the quarter, but more importantly, to have behavioral goals for the quarter. And I'm going to get back to that in a second. Now, the reason I put a 30 in here is when things are shifting quickly, I think it's okay to just say, this is what I believe we should do for the next 30 days, because now we're going to have another shift, right? And I'm not giving up on my 90-day goals. I'm not giving up on my annual goals, but I'm having some 30-day goals just because of this uniqueness. But I'm not giving up on 90 and 365. But again, I would only recommend 30-day goals when things are shifting this quickly. Otherwise, it's a little bit like watching the stock market go up and down. Not real meaningful on a daily basis. Okay, now the other thing here is determine the number of sales needed. So what you may do is say, depending on how quick of a turnaround your sales are, I typically have between 2 and 2.5 sales a month. So that would be, my goal is like 26 sales a year. That's why it's between 2 and 2.5. So, but I may say that I am not, that if depending on what's going on, that my sales may dip a little bit in May, but I have reason to believe that it could still be a little higher. I call it frugal fatigue. That was a phrase we had back in 08 and 09, and someone just said, I just think everybody is just like worn out by being frugal. And I'm like, amen to that. I mean, this country and this economy can only be frugal so long. We just don't have the discipline. So the point of it is, even though your sales might be down over the last couple months, there's a pent-up demand in some cases. And there are industries, which we just described, that are actually doing better. And so if you can start to redirect your behavior towards those that need things, that can put more of the odds in your favor. And then, of course, decide if the numbers are realistic. It may not be realistic for your quarter 2 to be the same as quarter 1. But it may be more realistic that your quarter 3 is better than what you would have said if the pandemic hadn't hit. Okay, so I'm going to stop for a second. Any questions that someone is, like saying, I feel like Dan's kind of talking out of both sides of his mouth. Something's not making sense here. If I am, I'm not meaning to, but I do know that sometimes when things are clear to me, they're not always clear to everyone else. So I'm going to give you just a couple seconds to see if there's anything in here. I'm looking at, we got some more insurance. I'm just reading through some of the notes here. Right. Jen had mentioned there's been a few postponements, but keep in mind those projects are still going to get done. And that's why, like, maybe the work that you could bill for is down a little bit, but maybe, it's going to be kind of expedited when they're able to start to do things. It just is. Okay, so I'm going to keep going here. All right, no questions on that. Okay, now another thing that I'd like to share with you guys is there is a goal. Like, I could still have a goal to bring in, $100,000 this quarter, but that doesn't necessarily mean I have a plan. Okay, so goals and plans are different. So what this would be an example of a plan where I am basically, writing out what types of prospecting I plan to do and how much to reach that goal. Some of you, just the way it is, you're going to need to work 30% harder to get the same results for a period of time. Okay. Now that just is. To just say, well, I'm just going to do what I do and see what happens. That may not make sense for you, or you may have regret in 6 weeks, 6 months that you were, day drinking and not really doing much for a while. That's obviously a choice you can make, but.
Are you talking to me, Dan?
Yeah. Not looking at anybody, and I'm not looking at anybody. No, I know.
Doesn't everybody have Bloody Marys at 9:48?
She waits till at least 4. No, but seriously, there were people just like, oh my God, I'm home. And, there was a, you got to be careful with stats, but 42% of people are saying they're day drinking at home. So that is obviously up, but that's a choice, right? Or, at least make a deal with yourself that you're not going to start day drinking until you make your calls. At least do that. But my point is that, but I need to have a plan to support the goals. Some of you have written down a number and you put it in a drawer and then you open it up and, oh my gosh, it happened, because that can happen. But imagine if you had a plan and you did that, it's more likely to happen. So here's just an example of some ways to prospect. And, obviously this is a worksheet we've been using for years, and some things have changed, but some things are just different. So the phone still works as last time I tried it. One thing that we're not able to do as much is do walk-ins. So walk-ins would be where I just, walk into a company, but there are businesses that are open, but let's face it, it's severely limited. Most, our door would be locked if you tried to walk in. Referral meetings. Now this is always a good thing to do. It's harder to do to get going, but it's way more effective. So who's to say that, for example, Mary and I decided, you know what, we can't meet for coffee right now, but let's have a Zoom meeting. And how about you look over my LinkedIn connections and I'll look over yours, and we'll both be prepared with 5 to 7 names. And we'll just see if it makes sense for us to introduce one another to those people. So she's doing the heavy lifting on my LinkedIn connections. I'm doing the heavy lifting on her LinkedIn connections. All we have to do is show up, show our names, and she might go, well, gosh, why did you pick that company? I would have never thought they'd be good for you. Oh, well, because of this, that, and the other. She goes, oh, okay. Well, I know them. But now she's not only, A, I'm making it easy for her to help me, but B, she's becoming more informed. I don't expect Mary to be an expert in my business, and nor does she expect me to be an expert in her business. But having that dialogue, not a monologue, is really effective. And now the reason you say, well, why 5 to 7 names? That's sure a lot, because there's probably only one in there that makes sense. I've got, not bragging, 5,300 connections. I have personally talked to or met most of them, but not all of them, because I'm a speaker. And if I know someone was in the crowd and I spoke, I am not going to say, I'm not going to connect with you because I don't know you. I'm going to connect with you because they know me. I just don't know them. They got exposed to me, so I'm just going to allow them. But the reality of it is, I'm going to say, that would be a cold call for me to call that person, and that doesn't make sense for me to do cold calls for Mary, even though she'd love me to. But it makes sense for Mary to say, I know that person, I like that person, they'll take my call. This is easy. And the worst thing they can say is tell Dan to go pound sand. That's the worst thing that can happen. But it's easy for her to find that out. So that would be an example of a referral meeting. Networking events. Now I know a lot of, in Shawnee not included, have gotten really creative on this. And you can still do networking meetings. It's not like it was, but I'm just curious if anyone is on this call that's participated in a networking, if there were some benefits that were better than an in-person. It just is. So I'm going to let Ann monitor that. Something came in. I'm not sure if it was relevant to this, but if something does, let me know. But networking events are still happening. They're being done through Zoom. I've been to several happy hours and with Zoom. My kids that are in college basically do it every night. That's another story. But let's see here. I've had, and there's some advantages to being able to do it through Zoom. I'm not suggesting it should replace face-to-face, but it's a good plan B. And then resurrection calls. Those are past clients. I had a guy, I can say his name, that he worked with me for about 3 months, about 10 years ago. And it ended. For me, 3 months is not a long time. And frankly, I'm like, yeah, that didn't go very well. And, we'll probably never talk again. And we didn't for 10 years until he called me. Now, I'm fearful to even say this because then you go see, Dan, you don't have to do anything. And he called you. Well, what you don't know is he's been on my drip campaign all this time. And I didn't know it either. And he thought of me. And he says, I've got these inside salespeople that have never been trained. We are in the aerospace and their business is actually up. That's another one. I forgot about that. And I just decided, it's time for them to get some training. So he is what I would call a resurrection call. Now you said, well, you didn't call him. Well, I took the call and we had a subsequent call. And he is going to do some just private stuff with me because we don't do that as a public. It's called our customer care program. We don't do that on a rotation. And he had enough people that it made sense to do it. So the moral of that is I am also calling people that have worked with me because things have changed. That, even though they're former clients, some of them, if you can imagine a lake and there's fish, are biting now that would not have bit even 8 weeks ago. And they already know you. And, I guess his opinion of me was better than I expected. Just being honest. I was a little disappointed with how it ended. But, it is what it is. Okay. So what I'd like you to do, let's do a little exercise here again. If you had to pick one of these, now this is not an exhaustive list. I've even heard that some people are doing trade shows through Zoom. I think that is freaking awesome. Trade shows. But what I'd like you to do is type in if there was one of these that it makes sense for you to become more intentional. I don't even need to know how much yet. What would it be? And we're going to get an idea of what people are thinking, whether it's more cold calls. It's funny on the cold calls. I'm going to talk while you guys are doing this. I think more than ever, it's a state of mind on that. I've had a lot of people say, I can't get a hold of anybody. And I've had other people say, oh my God, I'm getting a hold of people left and right. I'm like, okay, now this can't just be a state of mind. And here's what I discovered after I really started to unpack these conversations besides negative self-talk versus positive self-talk. If you are calling high up in the organization, which we always advocate for, CEOs, presidents, people who can say yes and not just no, they are answering their phones more than they were 8 weeks ago. If you are calling on gatherers, which I've never advocated for, people who can't say yes, but they can say no, they're not answering their phones. So what's the moral of the story? It's always, always, always best to call at the top. but even more so right now, because these executives and C-level folks aren't having people pawing at them all day, and they're not in as many meetings, and they're not traveling, and they're not commuting, and they're more available. Okay. So,
looks
and
like, we've got people making the resurrection calls. They want to focus on that, and then also referral meetings. A couple notes that popped up earlier though that I thought were kind of spot on is that, you know, new networking, but it's good. I definitely miss the face-to-face too, Jay. But the we do get different people and maybe more people in some of our events. Like for example, when we did our government affairs committee meeting, you know, that can be a little hit or miss for us. And we, I think for the first time ever, had everybody that is on our committee, maybe not everybody, but like 90% of the committees participate. So this—
And real quick before you, the roles of those people, were they higher up in an organization or lower in an organization that are on those committees?
They're higher up, yeah.
There's another example of the higher people are more available now. Okay, sorry, let's keep going.
Nope, that's just, but I think it is, you know, we're seeing people that don't really also have the luxury of traveling 30 minutes to a meeting, 30 minutes back, or 15, and building in all that extra time, you know, may join. Like even for today, like I know a few people had to drop off early, but they're like, oh, I can, you know, get 45, 50 minutes of, you know, the information. And so it has had its upside for sure, but it looks like people are really still, you know, focusing on those referral meetings and trying to get more of those.
Okay, and I just went up to the celebrities.
Oh yeah.
And Michael Douglas is one of them. So I can't tell who that's from.
That was Ann Roth. All right, Ann.
All right, Ann, you won.
Chamber will buy you a $20 gift card to your chamber member restaurant.
Awesome. So yeah, Michael Douglas is the one I get the most. Interesting, someone put Martin Sheen. It's not Martin Sheen, it's one of his kids. Anybody want to take a guess? Now, sorry, you're not going to win the $20 deal, but who do you, please don't say Charlie.
Sutherland?
It's Emilio.
Oh, Emilio Estevez. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I've never gotten the George Hamilton. That's interesting. Don Shula, I've never gotten that one. That's good though. I mean, the other ones are Steven Weber from Wings. I don't know if you remember him. One I get a lot that's an athlete is Joe Montana. So we were down at the parade, you know, in the Super Bowl, and I had a jersey on, and I had two people yell out Joe Montana at me. I didn't have a cap on. I don't see it, but that's okay. Those are the main ones. Okay, let's go back. Well, anything else real quick on that one, Ann? I mean, Ann.
Let me see. Nope. That was it. Kind of referral meetings, some resurrection calls. Yep.
Yeah, and our attendance, you know, we have been using, I think I mentioned that, Zoom for 4.5 years, and it was mainly for our clients that had people in other cities or even other countries. We have, this morning I had a session right before this, we had people from Ireland, UK, but we also had people, you know, even then, some people would live up north in our offices out south, and so, but now we went to exclusively, you know, Zoom over the past 6 weeks, and our attendance is up 40%.
That's awesome.
Consistently, because people don't have the commutes. They're not, you know, we work with sales folks, most of them, and they travel, you know, and they're not traveling. So there have been a lot of, again, back to what are you focusing on? There's a lot of good out there if you just look for it. It's just different. It's just different. All right, let's go back to share screen. By the way, I did see something in there about notes or the slides. I can send a PDF to the Shawnee Chamber, and I'll let them disseminate that if that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. It's okay. We'll put some of that on our website, or we can just—
yeah, whatever. Nothing here is super proprietary. Okay, and what did we decide was the most common, was resurrection calls the most
referrals? Referral meeting, what people are looking for.
Yeah, I love that. You know, it's so weird. It just is. Every time we do a cold calling session, it's always the most popular. And frankly, it's the least effective. And so I just had to get over it because it just frustrates me beyond no end. Sorry, I'm going to do a little rant here. Everybody says they want referrals. If I did a referral session, hardly anybody would sign up. It's completely bass backwards. And it's so frustrating because referrals is where it's at. And yet if I put on a really good, and it is rock solid, I bet if we did one for the chamber, we'd have 3 people show up. If I did a cold calling one, we'd have 40. So sometimes people don't always, their actions don't follow their thoughts. That makes no sense. It's so much more effective to get referrals. And frankly, most people kind of suck at it, but that's another day. Okay, we're just gonna jump, at least that's from my vantage point. And I know a thing or two. Okay, back to your competitive advantage. Now, we need to be clear on not what we do, but more so, why do they buy? You see, there's 2 whys here. Simon Sinek has a 17-minute TED Talk out there that's frankly pretty good. Personally, I think he's a little overrated, but whatever. But it is a good talk on start with your why. But I've taken a little bit different stance on his TED Talk, and I said, I think you need to start with your prospect's why. Because even if you know your why, if you don't know their why, it's better that you know your why. But if you don't know your why and you don't know your why, that's called the lights are out and I'm just swinging at stuff, hoping to hit something. And that's frankly what a lot of salespeople do. It's just, lights out. Oh my God, I hit something. Or what is it? There's no intentionality to what they're doing. So you do need to know your why, but you need to know more your client's why. It's interesting. There is a saying that a lot of salespeople and sales managers and owners of companies have used against the salesperson, and it was really never designed to be that way. And that is this thing: the customer is always right. That has been taken out of context for 40 years. So the customer is always right. This means what a lot of people say is you can't challenge them. Just give them what they want. Okay, that's just so icky. I don't even know where to start. First of all, they don't know what they need most of the time. Duh, that's why they're coming to you. Now, are they more informed than they were 20 years ago? Yeah, but they're also sometimes more confused because let's face it, not everything on the internet is true. So the reality of the customer is always right, that had to do with what they bought, not challenging them. That was never in that context. So I can say all day long, this is why we exist, but if nobody's buying, who's right? The client.
Right.
So that might be an aha for some of you, because most of the time that's been used as a club to beat up salespeople. And that is just entirely inappropriate and wrong. Salespeople have rights. Salespeople need to be qualifying and disqualifying just as much as the prospect. And if they think something is true and it's not, you owe it to them to challenge them because you're the expert. Now, I don't have to say I'm the expert and you're wrong. I'm just going to say, look, a lot of people believe that, but what if I shared with you that that's not why you're having this difficulty, but it appears that's the case? Do you even want to know? If they go, nope, then I think I'm not going to tell you because you can't be helped. Now, if you go, yeah, what are you talking about? What, you're not going to like my answer, but I mean, you've been working on this how long? 4 years. And what's happened? Nothing. Now, who's the expert now? And I haven't told them one thing. So we owe it to our prospects to challenge them, because if they were so darn smart, they would have had it fixed already. And they're not. You think, a doctor would say, oh, okay, that's what you think? Well, let's do that. I mean, oh my God, never. So we need to act like a doctor. Now, there are some doctors out there, let's face it, but doctors don't go, oh yeah, whatever you think. Because there's the thing called malpractice insurance. And I, in a weird way, wish there was malpractice insurance for salespeople, because maybe we'd start acting better. Because the stuff we're saying just is not appropriate. The stuff we're allowing is not appropriate. We are the experts. And if you're not, you need to become one. Okay, so, but why do they buy from you specifically? So what's the impact to them? Not what you do, but what's the impact to them? And then what do they miss out on? See, we like to talk about all the things you're going to get. Well, instead, let's talk about all the things. People make decisions based on avoiding pain 80% of the time. Only 20% do they make decisions on gaining. So some of us are just attacking the wrong end of the problem. Gain, 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 but only 20% care about that, and we wonder why. Most people don't take action until there's something they're going to lose. Health is a perfect example of that. People make all kinds of decisions if they have a TIA or if they had a heart scare, but all these years when they could gain, like losing weight, more energy, feel better, not so much, not so much. Okay, any questions before we move on? All right, now the main thing here that needs to be done differently is to not pretend that nothing's happening out there. That would be insensitive. People are losing their lives. People's family members have died. Now, in all fairness, they've also died from a lot of other things. And we're not talking about that, but it is what it is. But let's not be insensitive to it. So the main change here is this turbulent times precursor. This is magic. I am not going to assume that I know how this has impacted you, because if I do, I'm already like stepping on my foot and wondering why it hurts. So instead, I might say something to the effect, hey, before we get started, why I'm calling you, some of our clients' businesses are up, others are about the same, and others have really been impacted. What's it like for you right now? So what this allows me to do, now what you don't want to do, and this is never a good idea, is to say, how are you? How are you, or how are you doing? Because that is code word for, I'm just getting through this subtleties because I want to sell you something. I don't really care, but I feel like I should ask, but I don't really care. I wish you'd just say, and anytime you do that in any sales call, how are you today? The person instantly knows you're a salesperson, instantly. And if you've ever, like some of us work in small offices and sometimes we have to answer the phone, you know it, come on. If someone says, well, how are you today? And you're like, okay, this is not anybody I know, because nobody talks to me like that I know, right? So, and I know you don't care. You're just trying to get to what you really want to talk about. So let's stop doing that, because that doesn't support us. But now you're saying, well, you're kind of going there. No, I'm going about the business, because I sell to the business. Now, maybe some of you sell to the consumer, but it's still impacting some of their business, right? So let's just find out where they are, because if I act like everything's going to hell in a handbasket and their business is up, we're at a disconnect right away. So who made me God to decide where everybody's at? Nobody. So at least I want to find out, where are you? See, this is called focusing on them for a second, and I really care, because depending on where they are, they may not be a good fit for what we got. Remember? Qualify, disqualify, qualify, disqualify. They're qualifying, disqualifying you. And if you're not qualifying, disqualifying them, that is not a fair fight. Never will be. Okay? So I'm going to stop for a second. So that's how you get over the uneasiness of, well, no, not everybody's business now. We just proved it. In fact, only about 20% of the businesses are really negatively impacted. That means there's 80. And most of us act like 100% of businesses are down. They're not. Okay, so any questions come in during that?
Nope. No.
Now,
Nope.
Whatever they say here, this is a technique called mind reading out loud. I gave them 3 choices. 3 is the perfect number. 3 is the magic number. So anytime you can, now if you're doing 2, that's better than 1, but 3 is the best. Some are better, some are about the same, and some are worse. What's that like for you? I will get the truth, more of the truth, if I present it that way. Then whatever they say, I don't go, oh, okay, well, here's why I'm calling. I say, okay, tell me about that. See, I want to find out what's going on with that, because I really I genuinely want to know, because the last thing I want to do is waste your time, but I need to know a little bit to know if I'm wasting your time. Now let's go, one more. Okay, now this is where we start to share the impact we have rather than features and benefits, okay? So, you know, I'm gonna say who I am again, Dan Stalp with Sandler Training. I'm gonna give them enough information that they know what we do, sales coaching and professional development, and I'm gonna give them really specific people we work with. I don't typically work with office managers. I don't typically work with computer programmers. I don't really work sometimes with project managers. Occasionally I do, but our sweet spot is business owners who sell, sales management, and peak performer sales professionals. Sometimes I don't even work with all the salespeople. And I'm going back to what I said earlier. If they don't want to be helped, then we don't help them. And some of you need to be thinking about that with your prospects too. If they don't want your help, the harder you try, the worse it gets. It's just, you're just not a good resource for them right now. But like I said, there was a guy who called me, most of the others I found on my own, that I wasn't a resource for him 8 weeks ago. And now I am, okay? Now, but here are how we, just a second, that's just my reminder that we're gonna kind of wrap up here in a few minutes, is here's why you might wanna know what we do, but I'm still not telling them what we do. I'm not telling them that we have all these sessions every month. I'm not telling them that we are one of the top franchises in the world. I'm not telling them that we have 260 offices throughout the world and 116 US, because it doesn't matter. Now, what does matter is whether or not they can relate to this. And I want you guys, this is going to be the last vote, because there's some people on here that can relate to this. Some of you are tired of doing too much unpaid consulting. You're really good at what you do, but you sometimes get used for your information. It gets in the hands of a competitor. Or maybe they're what we call the do-it-yourselfers, and they take your ideas and they try to do them themselves and call it good. That's number one. Number two would be that whether it's pandemic or not, that phone weighs 800 freaking pounds. I mean, you are just afraid to make it. And fear is a legitimate emotion. There's nothing wrong with being fearful. There is something wrong if you're not taking any action based on that. But the emotion is perfectly normal. Or the third one is that you have a superior product. You guys are special, but you get commoditized and you get beat up on price. And it's just frankly not fair. Okay? So I want everybody, if you don't have, it does not relate to you, you don't vote. But I'm just curious, I want you to either put a 1, a 2, or a 3, and we're gonna see, now this is not a popularity contest. I'm not gonna change this just because 3 is more popular. I'm just showing you the power of 3. So let's have people start to put in, would you more resonate as a prospect, not with me? If you were a prospect, would you resonate with 1, 2, or 3? If you don't resonate with any of them, don't put anything. So just 1, 2, or 3. You can only do one or the other. And Ann is gonna just do a quick little, look down and see if there's anything that sort of jumps out more. 1, 2, or 3, or don't put anything. This is not forcing you to do something. Which one would you sort of resonate with more? Looks like we've got about 4 so far. Let's do a couple more.
1 is definitely coming in on the top here.
So my guess is you probably have, this is a guess, more of a technical product. Like there's a lot of pieces and parts to it. It could be like insurance. It could be like engineering services. It could be like even construction. Remodelers get beat up a lot on this, renovators, because there's just a lot that goes into a kitchen and a bath. I've never done one. Don't know if our marriage could support it, but that's a lot that goes into that. There's a lot of choices to make. Okay. So anything, I saw a couple more come in. I didn't look at them. Anything else?
No 3s so far. So
no 3s. Okay, good. So that just tells me that you're more equipped to explain the differences. And like I said, fear is that's to protect you. But fear, when you aren't dealing with it, is unhealthy, right? Okay, so that's the last. And then whatever they say, like let's say 1, they would have said, tired of doing too much unpaid consulting. I kind of prompted you for that. And I would say, tell me more about that. And so then I could have a conversation with those of you that picked 1. Or, like, what's that like for you? Is it the phone? Is it email? Is it walking in? Is it networking? What's it like for you? Where's the fear coming from? So it allows us to have a conversation instead of me right away going, well, you need us then. No, you don't. I have no idea whether you qualify, but at least we're having a conversation. Okay. So here's what we need to do to wrap it up. I'm just giving you guys some things to think about. I would like 3 people to verbally share with me, what did you get out of today? What's one thing? Or we can chat it. We can put it in the, or you can't verbally, I'm sorry. Chat, and then Anne's going to verbally say it. So if you type something in there, she might pick some good ones, and don't feel bad if she doesn't pick yours. Just picking them. But the other thing I wanted to share with you is I'm doing this as a give back. I've got the stuff, people need it, and the chamber is not paying me to do this. You're not paying me to do this. I'm doing it because it's the right thing to do, okay? But then one of our vendor partners, Outmatch, is giving back to us. And so I'm going to give it back to you. And it's this crisis management assessment. And they're for a limited time. I just texted them today to make sure that this was still going on because they can shut her down anytime. It's still going on. Where if you want to take this assessment, it takes 15 minutes. It's free to you. And then I'm going to allocate a 45-minute call for those of you that take it, and this is free as well, where I'll go over the assessment, but as a group. I can't be doing every one of you individually for free, but I can do a group assessment. So, a group together where you'll have your assessments and we'll go over and you can ask questions, but I won't have your assessment and people won't see your assessment. But if you just type crisis in the chat, then I know you want the link, and then I'll send you the link, and then I'll send you the date and the time of when we can review that as a group. I did it last week, and only 2 people, 3 people took the assessment, only 2 people showed up for the actual review. So they pretty much had me to themselves. Okay. So only if you type crisis, and I'll have to figure out how I'm going to get your email addresses, but I think I'm only going to do this for the people that you're not going to hear anything else from me. Okay. But let's go ahead and do, what kind of lessons learned are you seeing in the chat? Or maybe I can stop share too, but only type crisis if you want the link. If you don't type crisis, you won't get anything from me.
Well, I'll read these here in a second, but just one thing that I thought was interesting was really at the beginning, just kind of doing that self-check, that mind, body,
Yes.
Spirit check, because I do think that there really is a lot to getting yourself in the right headspace and physical space to get yourself motivated to do work in a whole different way, because it is easy sometimes to let it go. I don't know, so far I haven't had a day where I've been able to kick back and watch Netflix, but it's hard sometimes to kind of keep that momentum going. So I think that that's really important, that how we approach it holistically really, I think, comes through to the person on the other end of the call or the receiving end of that email. It does make all the difference. And I think we can all think about those people that seem like they're just trying to, get the donuts made that day, or trying to, really care and are interested and engaged in it. So that was just my perspective, but it sounds like from what I'm seeing here that the prospecting activity worksheet, the script examples are really helpful, and that competitive advantage form, which I agree, I like that too. It's always good to hear others say that cold calling is their least successful form of prospecting.
Yeah.
At ARC. So true. And also enjoy Ann Roth with the triangle and organizational assessment, and that was great information.
Good.
Then
Yeah.
people typing crisis.
And on the competitive advantage thing, real quick, that's another example of sometimes the client is right, because some of us think we are effective in ways that they don't necessarily agree with. And there's other ways that we're effective that we don't know we are. So, whether it's, I've hired market research people to contact my clients before, because they're frankly sometimes more honest with them, because it's not me asking the question. So I think sometimes you want to have, you could have an intern do that this summer. There's a lot of young people, sharp people that their internships got canceled this summer. And so they would love to do an internship. And if you can just pay them a little money, it's good for you, it's good for them. I know Ann's son has an internship. I think he kept his, but my son lost his, but he ended up getting another one, which was amazing. But there's a lot of sharp kids between their junior and senior year that their internships they got canceled throughout the country. So there's some good help out there if you guys, and that'd be a great internship for some young man or woman that sees himself in a marketing or PR or sales role, to contact your clients and ask those questions like, what is it about us that you stay with us? Things like that. Okay, anyone else? All right, well, listen, this was awesome. Wish, it just is what it is, because I don't know how many people are on here, but sometimes we can't always communicate, verbally with you guys, but I really appreciate all the chats. And I'm glad that some of you got something out of it. That's my goal.
And just before you jump off, I just want to make sure, so I will send the crisis link, or everybody on here that emailed crisis, I'm writing down everybody's names real quick.
That'd be great. So then I can send it to you. Now, real quick, it may not be a bad idea for me to have those emails as well, because there's something I need to communicate to you guys. That one of the things is that I don't get a copy of your assessment. So you need to let me know if you completed it. It's unusual. Normally we would get a copy, but they're not tying it to the person that invited you. So that way, and then when I set up the times, I need to communicate with you that this is the time, 45 minutes, that we're going to review it. But otherwise, I don't need everybody else's emails. So how about and then I need to send the PDF PowerPoint to Ann, and then you can send that out to everybody. Yeah.
Great.
But I may need to communicate with them, but just the crisis people, because there's more going on there.
Okay, I think I got everybody. Wonderful. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I thought this was really great. And thank you all are listening out there. And again, we will have May 14th, Toby Cook. So hopefully you'll join us for that as well. And just a reminder to support your local chamber businesses.
Yes.
I know some of us are doing okay and some of us are struggling, but it is Cinco de Mayo after all. So
that's right.
Sombreros, Sancho's all doing some Cinco de Mayo specials. So anyway, that's my plug for our.
Yep, day drinking's okay today.
It is, yeah. Today is fine. So.
All right, everybody. Thanks, and thanks to the chamber. You guys are awesome, and for being a friend of ours, and we really appreciate it.
You bet. You bet. You all have a wonderful day.
All right. Bye-bye.